if I do business with you, if I enter into a relationship with you, professional relationship, and I were to purchase any financial product, will you receive a commission, referral fee, kickback of any sort? And if the answer is yes, turn on your heels and go someplace else.
Thanks for watching Hot Flashes and Cool Topics podcast. Be sure to subscribe and ring that bell to catch all of our conversations. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics podcast. Today we are talking with Debra Morrison, and we are going to talk finances, guys. So get ready for it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be with you guys.
Well, this is a conversation that a lot of women, even in 2025, still feel uncomfortable to talk about. And I found your TED Talk so interesting because it kind of dives into feel the fear and do it anyway. Why do you think it's still the norm for so many women to be uncomfortable talking about finances?
Well, Colleen, this is a topic, money, that is loaded, right? It's absolutely loaded with a whole host of meaning and tradition and history. And of course, the socialization around money for women, and particularly older women, like I consider 60 and wiser, right? This has really been horrific, in so much as we were pretty much told, don't wear your little head over that, Betty, Bob will handle it, And I say in my TEDx talk, that's great if Bob doesn't prematurely die or come home and trade you in for 230s. And that happens so much. Right between a hot flash, there you are, face it. All right, so I'm sorry. So the fact is that we as women, older women in particular, horribly socialized. And then, there's so much sexism still baked into our systems that God help women that just nose to the grindstone, do their level best, rise up through some of the corporate glass ceilings, bust a lot of glass while they're at it. And then somebody says she slept to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And complete eradication of all the effort that women who have busted through barriers is completely damning. So let's say you were on her heels, that little hypothetical, right? Let's say you were emulating her progress. You want to, oh, geez, they're going to say, I slept my way to the top. You see, so they realize, the system realizes you keep one powerful woman down, there's 7,000 or maybe a zero on the end of that are in her shadow and are going to take her lead. And so if you thwart someone, you are going to thwart a lot. And the better that it is for us boys, because they continue to feel that there's one pie and there's one way to slice it, and nothing given to women, granted to women in recognition of our efforts, is doing anything but taking away from them. And if we could get beyond this limited, thinking into much more expansive, if we could imagine that the world has like a few problems right now, and particularly the United States of America. And if we were welcoming in the ideas and the input and the intellect and whatnot, and the humor of women, we'd probably get to the finish line, certainly in a more equitable and distributive way that benefits more than the ultra billionaires. And yet there is this allergy. There's an allergy to women's spirits. And so I'm going to bring it back to money, because money, I was raised Christian fundamentalist, filthy lucre, bada bing, bada bang. And so, I talk in my TED, like a little thwarted, well, on the one hand, we're kind of taught, money is kind of evil, even though that was a really misreading of the Bible. And then on the other hand, like in my Baptist church, we were going to be expected to tithe 10% off the top, 10%, not 9%, not 8%, 10% plus offerings. So, okay, if money is so evil, where are we going to get the money to tithe and offer, right? So you wanted to talk about the Vitamix into which money and women have been turned on high. It's big.
So with women that, like you said, somebody traded them in for 230s. You know, this happens. And they were not part of their financial life. They didn't know where their money was. Husband dies or husband divorces, and they might even be rock bottom. They may only have $100 in their checking account. Where is a good place for a woman like that to start?
Well, two things are really big messages that I always like to impart. And one is, it's not your fault, and it's your responsibility. So it's not your fault you're socialized horribly. It's may or may not be your fault about the divorce. It's not one of my business. It's certainly not your fault in terms of a person dying prematurely. The issue is, here we are. I would say to people that are recovering from grief, what would your person have you do now? Yes, grieve, miss them, talk about them, tell stories, and bring now your intellect into a space where you can prepare yourself to imagine some next steps. And so some of that is really starting with, okay, what are my options? And we don't stop with two. Because that, that kind of like, well, you gotta do this, or, live on my own, or keep this house, or I'll move in with the kids, right? It's just the way I said it. It's just kind of like almost a darned if I do, darned if I don't, right? No, I always want three or more. Now, you know what this does? It keeps us into kind of a visioning and an imagination zone that we women are capable of. All right. And so what advice could I give a person that's just upside the head and just, or single all these while I'm single, right? Nobody to converse with. I have a responsibility. We all have to ourselves to have this conversation. And I always say, and I have this, just obviously, I'm just holding up a heart-shaped mirror, right? I want to have a conversation with myself that is truthful, hopeful, and filled with possibility. And that involves me getting real with myself. Now, I know that we jump right to, I don't have enough money. I've undersaved. I've underinvested. Woe is me. I'm so stupid. The self-flagellating, right? Nobody heard me say that at the beginning. I'm just saying what the typical response is, like, don't tell me that because I can't do it. Well, guess what? If you believe you can, or if you believe you can't, you're probably right. So now, probably one of the worst things in life has happened to you in those two circumstances. So there's a sense by which, like, the shine is off the apple, right? Like now it's just like you're raw. And it's a perfect thing. It's like clay now, able to be molded. And there is so much life ahead of us that I implore each of us women to take an assessment and find yourself a good money coach. I happen to be serving as one, and yet there are, hundreds out there. Well, there are thousands out there. Some of them were unemployed yesterday. But the fact is, you want to get into some type of a relationship with someone that you can trust. And here's the qualifier. That person is not going to earn a commission on a product they're going to sell you. Zero. So if you're looking up coaches of any stripe around money, here's the question you have to ask them. Even though some skin in and say they're a fiduciary planner. I was a fiduciary fee-only planner the last 22 years of my 42 years practicing experience, a certified financial planner. So fiduciary used to be the buzzword. It differentiated commission from non-commission. But then there are people that call themselves a fiduciary for the planning and then open up a second or four other companies in which they sell high commissionable products. So the question we have to ask, because we have to ask good questions, women. If I do business with you, if I enter into a relationship with you, professional relationship, and I were to purchase any financial product, will you receive a commission, referral fee, kickback of any sort? And if the answer is yes, turn on your heels and go someplace else. So we can give you a link for fee-only planners. It's NAPFA, National Association of Personal Financial Advisors.org. NAP as in Paul, F as in Frank, A.org. That's a good place to find a actual fiduciary planner. Or there's a network of fee-only planners that deal with people with lesser assets, which might be good for a person starting out. And it's Garrett Financial Advisors. And I'm sorry, I don't have that memorized, but Garrett, Garrett. You'll find it.
Not
So
like my last name. Yeah.
oh, yeah. Go
We're
for it,
ATT,
sweetheart.
but that, yes.
So
Okay.
if you're diving into the world, whatever your circumstances, whether you're divorced, you're widowed, or you're just turning 40, 50, saying, I need to educate myself on, I need to have some control over my own financial being. Where is kind of the first place you should look? Documents? Should you look at your checking account? Like, where do you start?
Well, it's a really good question. And as a practitioner, I was quite aware of the inevitability of time. And so no one even had to tell me. I just realized, holy camoli, we got to take care of the risks first. So we deal with the insurances, for example, right? Now, some of the risks in life you bear yourself, like in the form of a deductible, let's say on your homeowners or your car insurance policy, you're going to be responsible for the first, however much your deductible is, $500, that's yours. And then above that, you're passing it on to an insurance company in exchange for a premium, right? So that's really the essence of risk. You're going to assume some of it, and then the groups of zero risk, as I call it, the loss of a partner's income, right? The loss of your own income in a disability, for example, the potential for liability, those you're passing on to an insurance company. And I don't want us to be short-sighted on that, because I'm off to say, one lawsuit can ruin your entire morning. So you do not want to avoid looking at covering your risks. And people say to me, and I say to people like, okay, do you have an umbrella policy? And some people say no, and that horrifies me. So, and then some people say yes, and it's kind of like this check mark, right? Yep, I got it. They're almost breaking their arm, patting themselves in the back. I said, great, how much do you have? $1 million, because that's kind of how it's sold. That's the minimum policy. What's your net worth? Oh, 3.5 million. Oh, I see. You think someone's going to sue you for $1 million? So umbrella liability insurance is really good. Better to have $1 million than nothing. But let's be real. If a woman can sue McDonald's for $88 million for dumping her own hot coffee on her own lap, and you or I are charged with maiming or killing someone on the road, or someone slips on our front step, they're not suing us for $100,000. So let's cover the real vulnerabilities, because the decision of whether to invest in Microsoft or NVIDIA is really quite beside the point at that time. So let's deal with the risks first, and then we're going to go about doing some type of a collection and an assessment, right? Like, let's imagine you walked into, well, if you have kids or kids, like walked into the kids' room, and typically they're kind of a little messy, right? So you say, oh, all right, take an inventory here. We got the toys. Some of the toys belong here. Some of them don't, right? You just take an inventory, you get an idea, and then you start to make order to it. So if you've been too afraid to open statements, for example, or to look at your finances, then that's the first way of doing it. And many coaches will take you through a very, very easy step-by-step exercise in this. That's actually fun, right? See, we tend to, in life, as human beings, fear the unknown, right? Kind of normal. That's the job of our subconscious, to protect us. But guess what? Guess what? More than 1 million times, people say after they deal with a professional, like, and they're coaching them, right? Say, I wasn't as bad off as I thought. That is exactly the comment I hear, like widow after widow after widow, because I was like doing a lot of widow counseling for a long time. And boy, they were nervous, they were afraid, they were uneducated about money. And we'd talk and we'd assess, and they would start to sit up a little bit more erect in their chair, and they said, it's not as bad as I feared, right? If we're not paying ourselves first, that's a great place to start.
What do you mean by that?
Great question. So like, I'll be in the front of an audience. I'll say, who gets paid first, your electric company or you? Electric company. Why? Oh, because that's automatic out of my checking account. Oh, I see. How about we set up a savings account, and you might have it through your employer to fund your 401k or 403b. And if you do, God love you. That's qualified retirement amount. I also suggest having a systematic savings plan. So whether you choose a company or whether, I mean, I don't get any money from them, but I a lot use Betterment for one of my group coaching programs, and people liked it. It was very low cost and minimum of like $1 a month, right? We can do this. See, I am not asking you to put away, $1,000 a month. I'm saying set up a systematic savings or investment plan for yourself. You know what this does? Start to give us the confidence. Hey, you get a statement in the mail or maybe electronically, and you say, hey, I got 8 units this month. And next month you put in the same amount, boom, 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 or twice a month, however the frequency. I don't care. I want to get that. And for the listeners, I'm doing a motion. Get your hand into your pocket. I want to get that motion started, because once that starts and you get a sniff of your being able to do it, you've logged a win. And now you're going to have another win, because the next time, if you did it twice a month or once a month, a similar amount goes in and you have more units and more units. I never want you to, this is a big tip, never want us to look at the balance. Oh, I put $100 in, it's only worth 85. All right, get over yourself. Look at the number of units you have. I will tell you, this is one of the biggest tips, probably the entire interview. If you take nothing away, go on a systematic savings plan. Even look at your 401k, 403b balance. And you're going to see the number of units go up and up and up. So here's the clue phone. People get a little nervous when the stock market and the price of stocks goes down. That is when you buy more units. Here's the math, $100 a month. Let's say whatever you're buying is $10 a share. The first month you bought 10 shares. Let's be extreme. It goes down 50%. Now it's $5 a share in the next month. You're still saving 100. 100 divided by 5 is 20. You got 20 units in the second month on top of the 10 units on the first month. Because the price changes all the time. We don't care about the price now because we're not selling. I hope that's landing for people, because if we focus on the units, what we want now, this, if you have your chair, something standing near a counter, hang on. You want the market to go straight down when you're investing systematic.
And why is that?
You're buying more and more units. So here's the deal. Our investments, and for the listeners, I'm holding up 10 digits. If you're lucky enough to have 2 hands and 5 digits on each one, they're going to hold different positions. Some of these accounts are going to be positive this Monday. Some of them are going to be negative. Some of them, and I have them gyrating in positions of being up or down. The fact is, when you're properly diversified, you're going to have a number of different investment types from which to choose where your next withdrawal will be, whether it's way out in retirement or whether it's to upgrade your bathroom or put your kid in college. And so we want to be unit accumulators. And if you can land with that concept, now we are going to perceive ourselves as winning. And guess what? That's the first step.
So when you were talking about units and being well diversified, what I don't know, like individual stocks versus mutual funds, how should a woman in our demographic
It's overwhelming for a lot of women to look at that and say, I'm 50, where do I start?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great point. Well, I had always said, and I still believe it's wise, that we have at least $250,000 in mutual funds, or they're like kind of look like exchange traded funds, ETFs, exchange traded funds, because before we buy one individual stock. Now, maybe your grandfather and your father and you all worked at the same company for like 1,000,000 years and you're in love with this company, or there was a stock purchase plan. Okay, so you might have this one stock for a reason. All right. However, generally speaking, we want to diversify our risk. IBM seems to kind of hold true more than even oh, what's the bank down there? Entrust or something, Envest, I don't know. But IBM, Big Blue, right? Used to be all of our computers were Big Blue. That stock went like, Bank of America in the 50s and 60s went to $3 a share. It happens to big companies. Now, each of these companies came back, but some of them don't. Why would you set yourself up for the potential for more risk than what you need to take? So what you're doing by buying the Standard & Poor 500 index, for example, a mutual fund or an index, something that mirrors an index, is you're buying, and I'm saying for the listening audience, I'm making this big kind of a basket with my hand, this basket of securities. You can have a mutual fund of bonds, you can have a mutual fund of stocks, you can have a mutual fund of emerging market stocks, all kind of things in these baskets. The point I'm making is if you have 500 stocks or 500 bonds in one container, in one wrapper, and you invest in that, and one of those companies goes bankrupt, kind of yawning. All right, sorry that happened, but it didn't really set you off your pace. The stock that you had in your portfolio, it goes down, that's not a good day. So diversification would have us be not only invested in mutual funds, or I love indexes. You can never invest exactly in the index. You invest in something that mirrors the index. All right, that's what we have. So your Standard & Poor 500, and you're going to have this as a choice in almost probably every single 401k plan and 403b plan that you're offered through your employer, if you're that lucky. So there's a great place to start. You see that with stocks for the long term. You want to do stocks for 7+ years. You do not want to get involved in investing in stocks or stock mutual funds. For example, when I say stocks, I mean stock mutual funds for less than 7 years. Can you make money like in a New York minute? Yes, but don't count on that, right? So 7+ years. So here's the deal. We women at this stage of our life, 50 and north, typically, we have a shorter timeline than when we were 20. However, unless you have a terminal illness or a bad diagnosis, when I was doing planning, I'm figuring on you're living to 99. I think 2 of my 4 grandparents lived well into their 90s. And I'm telling you, when it's not a good idea to imagine that you're going to live into your 90s is at age 85, right? Because you don't have so much time then to plan it. So you want to plan for the long term. And here's the deal. We as women get it that we have a spice rack, right? Or a drawer or a cabinet or some darn thing filled with everything from vanilla and cinnamon and cayenne pepper and dillweed. You do not put dillweed in a chocolate chip cookie recipe and expect something that tastes good. So also, you are not well served to invest your retirement funds in a bond, because that's like sending a girl to do a woman's job. Last 80 years of history shows bonds on average 4 to 5%, on average percent total return. On average, stocks, same 80 years of history, 9 to 10%. Even with the new math, that's double. Now, no one, please go away and say, well, Debra said stocks are going to make 10% for forever. No, I did not. However, as Mark Twain said, history may not repeat itself, but it'll surely rhyme. So we want to be judicious about the particular types of investments so that they match the recipe we tracking. So you're going to put, your vanilla in your chocolate chip cookie recipe typically, and not in your beef roast, or if you're a vegetarian, in your stew. It doesn't work. There has to be a recipe, and the ingredients that go into it make a difference. And one more thought on this little tangent. You got your chocolate chip cookie ingredients out in front of you, right? Couple cups of flour, teaspoon probably of baking powder. You don't mix them up. You don't do a teaspoon of flour and a couple cups baking powder and expect something good. So you don't go into the Morning Star, I call the tic-tac-toe chart. There's three across the top, three down, and say, I'll have one of these, I'll have one of these, I'll have one of these. No. So there's an art and a science to this. And I don't want you to become a technician because you got your own specialty. I want you to be guided by a person that's been there.
What about access? Because when we're at this age, retiring or widowed or heading toward retirement, perhaps, we want to be in different things where we can have access to our money if we need it. What are some good areas that we could go where we could have access to our money?
Well, first of all, on your own investments, you'll typically have access no matter. Like if you set up a systematic savings plan and then you have to abort it for whatever reason, you go in there and you pull it out. So if it might be at a lower price than what you put it in, whatever, there might be a little bit of well, if you get into like a commission-rich product, like an annuity, God forbid, there's a penalty to pull that out, right? There is. So that's why you're not going to buy a commission product, right? Because there are fee-only people out there that are able to sell you fee-only products, right? Almost void of commission, almost the whole gamut. I think almost every product, you don't have to pay commission, right? And so my point is, now listen, if all the commission salespeople in the world, really put the consumer's interest first, I wouldn't really need to talk like this, but they don't. So the fiduciary planner is the only person, if you can imagine this, that signs an oath, and they don't even need to sign the oath because that's how we were wired, right? To put the client's interest first. Your broker does not sign anything, adhere to anything to putting you first. So why would we continue to pay generate his boat payment, right? No. So the point is, access is something that you will have varying degrees of, probably based upon the investments that you have. So typically a bond is not going to have as much price volatility as would a stock. Now, does that mean bonds are safe and we can't lose money in bonds? No, nope, that's not what I said. You can lose a lot of money in bonds, and you can lose a lot of money in stocks if you're not judicious. And you can make a lot of money in bonds, and you can make even more money in stocks if you are judicious. So let's have our investments be suited from a type, which has to do with about how long will they be in the oven, right? So our little cookie recipe, right? A chocolate chip cake, a chocolate cake, right? 350 in the oven for an hour. You put all these good ingredients in the cake mix, you beat it all up, and you slam it in the oven for an hour, 350. And in 20 minutes, you're real curious, and you open the door and you jerk it out. You're no longer curious. You see it. The cake will fall. It's not going to turn out well. So you don't go into stocks whose recipe says an hour, and in 4 minutes, you come back out and you pull it out. You have access. It won't be pretty. Now, the other thing, if you're a homeowner, you would be wise, I think, to establish a home equity line of credit. HELOC, home equity line of credit, HELOC. That, if you don't have a problem with debt, and if you do, don't do it. But if you don't, then that serves like a line of credit with the equity of your home behind it. So the bank's willing to give it to you because they'll take your home if you default on it. However, everybody knows it's smart to have an emergency fund. How many people were flat-footed when the pandemic hit? A lot. And they were rescued by the government giving money. And the government did a wise thing because we'd have fallen right into depression. So I'm not casting blame or anything. I'm just saying that if you felt flat-footed in the pandemic or anything else, like if you're partnered and your partner got laid off, or you entrepreneur and you have less gigs now, whatever it is, that's when your emergency fund comes into play. And you're like, oh, I can't seem to find my emergency fund. Oh, because I never made an emergency fund. So like, what's the adage? 6 months of your living expenses in an emergency fund. How about this? If we're undersaved already for any number of reasons, then if we don't have a problem with debt, then instead of having $35,000 over here in a money market that's serving as an emergency fund for a potential, and it might never happen, knock wood, maybe we establish the HELOC over here so that if we have a hole in the roof and we need to fix it for $10,000, we write the roof for a check this afternoon. They fix the roof and it goes under our home equity line. And now we take a look at our investment portfolio and say, should we sell something out of here to repay the home equity line, or do we just keep that for a little while because the market's a little bit flimsy and we wait for the situation to be such that we'll shore these things up? You see how that frees up us having 30 or whatever 6 months of your expenses are in a basically interest only account.
What is your opinion on long-term health care?
Well, so many of us are going to need long-term health care. And some of us who are lucky enough to just face plant into our Cheerios won't. Difference is, the problem is we don't know who is who. So my parents now are both deceased. Dad died just this past September. Mom died the previous June. They both they moved out of their home into an adult community where there was care built in. And as they regressed in their health, they went into elevated levels of care. And that's how they lived the last few months and years of their life. And we were very grateful for that. And of course, we had home health care come in and so forth. So the fact is, some people say, well, I got kids. Oh, I see. You've got kids. I'm not sure how many are going to come and be the caregiver. Like, probably none, because kind of like kids, people have their lives. So I think it's an interesting idea. And I own 2 policies on myself. I'm single. I don't imagine anybody else going to be taking care of me. So I'd like to be able to pay someone to take care of me, whether it's in my home or in a facility. I don't, hopefully it's a few years away. The issue is there are policies out there now. It's like I make an analogy to like a Christmas tree. Like you buy a Christmas tree, and like my dad, it was a big joke. If he bought a Christmas tree, the spine would look like an S curve. It's like, Dad, seriously, just how about one with a straight spine? So you buy a long-term care policy with a straight spine right on it, right? You don't like buy one with 73 ornaments hanging off of it. Like this is a return or premium rider. So if you don't use this long-term care, we'll return your premium. Guess what? You're paying like triple between now and then in order to get back this modicum of a refund. I'm not sure that makes sense, right? Then there's long-term care that's smushed in with life insurance, and you can really never tell the difference. And then there's long-term care that's smushed in with, an annuity, I think even. But the fact is, here's an idea that maybe you didn't think of. So you buy long-term care by the day. I like the idea of having one policy. Now, some people say, well, I'm coupled and we can't afford to buy it on both of us. You know what happens statistically? In a heterosexual marriage, sometimes the male is older, but more, even not, if not longevity wise, the statistics show he's gone down first. So if he goes down and his wife is caregiving him, maybe we buy the long-term care on the wife. Now that really puts the wife into this like position that, I'm not saying that she was really choosing necessarily, but the fact is I have to think about where I'm going to route my money. And I want my premium money to be routed in the direction and in the percentage in which I believe it's going to give me the greatest ROI. It just comes down to that, right? And so that might be an idea. So you buy it by the day. So you look up long-term care coverage, the price of a long-term care facility in the area of whomever you're talking about, you, your parent, whatever. And if it's $350 a day, then you might buy a policy that says $300 a day, and you're going to buy it for 2 or 3 years or unlimited, which is a very expensive thing. And then you're going to put an inflation rider on. I do suggest that inflation rider because inflation. And it won't be cheap, and yet it'll be there.
There's so many issues and so many things to talk about. And you have a great Facebook group, which shares a lot of thoughts and conversations. Can you share with the audience a little bit about your Facebook group?
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I own the trademark. We can do it, women, if you can believe it.
Mhm.
And I was so psyched to get that. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to have a Facebook group, and we have one called We Can Do It Women. It's called 60 Plus Community because of the community Facebook page. Now, I really have a passion for helping 60-plus-year-old women because of the socialization. It's different than a 40-year-old, right? Let's fill our cup up. And the overflow from our cup is that from which we give, not at the expense of our own financial security. So the airlines have it right. If the oxygen masks drop from the compartment above, put your own mask on. I'm in a collaborative book, and that's how I started my chapter. It does not say, they do not come on and say, if the oxygen mask drop down, men, put your own oxygen masks on first. Women, look to the person to your left, put their oxygen mask on, look to the person to the right, and put their oxygen mask. Stand up, look behind you, put their oxygen masks on in front of you. If you have any air left, put your own on. No, they do not say that.
Yet that's how women have been raised. That's what they've
Right.
been doing. So that
I
makes,
wasn't going to
yeah.
say it, but yes, of course.
Yeah, 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 that's what they've been doing. But
Thank-
I think it's so important is that gives them hope. You can do it, even with just a tiny bit of money, even if you feel like you can't, you can do something in there. So that's why we can do it, women.
We can do
Exactly.
it, women.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Deborah, for coming on today. We appreciate your time and the conversation. And thank you so much.
Yes,
Well,
thank
I
you.
appreciate you and your reach and your message.